A lot of articles and experiments have been done to demonstrate that particles don't actually travel between point A and point B. What happens is when a particle is measured or detected at point B, then its wave-like or particle-like reality is brought into existence. And so prior to this, you just have a probability of finding a particle where you look, but it doesn't actually exist there. Yes.
Oh, Sasha, thank you for that interesting introduction to this video. I'm not exactly sure why you were all phasing or looking like you were about to be teleported. Maybe you think that the quantum nature of the universe manifests itself like that in our macroscopic universe, and thereby you are both a particle and wave. Yeah, I think you have some fundamental misunderstandings of quantum physics there. Hi, I'm Jenny from Jen's Little Corner, and this one's going to be interesting.
Reality becomes when it's measured or detected. It's brought into existence by that measurement or that detection. Before that, it is just a probability.
That's an interesting take you have there, Sasha. Perhaps more a philosophical one than a physics one. The particles that we are in our universe are not virtual particles. They don't pop in and out of existence. There is a duality nature of those particles where they can be both waves and particles, but they don't just stop existing. They are still there. Our ability to detect where a particle is and what direction it's travelling in and the speed of it and its rotation are limited by the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. But they still exist. They're still real. They're still measurable. So when you say that reality doesn't exist until we observe it, that's actually fundamentally wrong. Reality does exist. It obviously exists because it's here. If you want to argue that reality doesn't exist and we're brains in a vat, that's an entirely different philosophical question. But from the point of view of science, what we see, what we observe, is considered real. We see, we observe these particles. We know they're real. Just because we can't fully detect them doesn't make it less so.
There's a superposition where a particle travels through every possible path through the universe between point A and point B, and then when you measure detected at point B, then it collapses into one path taken.
All the possibilities, all at once. While technically true, it's a bit of an oversimplification. At the quantum level, all particles exist as both a particle and a wave. This is the dual nature of particles. These particles can exist in different states, having different positions, energies, or moving at different speeds. But quantum mechanics is weird. Particles aren't thought of as being in one state or changing between a variety of states. Particles are thought of as existing across all possible states at the same time. Hence Sasha saying, all the positions, all the possibilities, all at once. So if you're thinking in terms of particles, it technically means a particle can be in two places at once. This isn't intuitive at all, but it's a strange reality of quantum physics. Now, as to the particle going all around the universe to arrive at a position right next to where it was, it is a bit of a misunderstanding of how we apply quantum mechanics. The wave equation in quantum physics is a probability equation. So the probability of a particle being in every possible state or location is taken into consideration when calculating what a given particle or group of particles will do in a given situation. So it is quite possible that a particle may go all around the universe to arrive at a location right beside itself. But the probability of that happening is so infinitesimally small that in the entire age of the universe, this is likely to have never happened.
But that's just one explanation, or more of an analogy or a metaphor for what's actually happening. In reality, what's happening is when a particle is measured, detected by a human, then the particle, in every sense of the word, becomes real.
The particles we are talking about here do not pop in and out of existence. These particles are real. The equations that describe them are real. You're confusing virtual particles with actual particles.
And then by bringing that particle into reality, into existence, then it creates a past history for that particle. And it creates a path history for the travel of that particle. So up until you measure it, it doesn't actually exist as a thing. It's just a probability of finding a thing if you look in different places. So if you look here, maybe there's a 40% probability that the particle will be there. And if you look here, maybe there's a 90% probability that you'll find your particle there. But the particle in and of itself is not actually there.
It's Sasha. So close and yet no banana. The particles themselves and or their wave components actually exist. We use probability to calculate the locations and the paths of quantum particles because of a lack of understanding by us of exactly how the quantum world behaves. We have pretty good understanding of it, but a deep-rooted understanding of how quantum particles behave is something that we're still working towards. And the mathematics and the principles that we have now are the best ways we have to describe this realm. This is a limitation of us, not a limitation of particles themselves. These particles exist regardless of our knowledge of science. Now, the fact that we can perceive them as both particles and waves is absolutely fascinating and truly, truly mind-blowing from our perspective at a macroscopic level. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a logically consistent reason why this occurs, and we think there probably is. But your assertion that these particles don't exist is just wrong.
Only when you look that it's rendered. Scientists accept this as reproducible results. They've done these experiments over and over and over, and they keep getting this same conclusion, and so they just accept it. And we accept it because they tell us that this is what happens, and this is how the universe works.
Yes, we accept them. And yes, these experiments are repeatable. The experiment that Sasha was showing here is the double slit experiment, first conducted by Thomas Young in 1801. Thomas thought this experiment showed conclusively that light was a wave. It wasn't until much later that we discovered that it was also a particle, and that most things, well, all fundamental particles are both waves and particles. Now, this doesn't mean that they just pop into existence when we observe them. The wave particles duality of matter is always there. These particles or waves always exist. What is interesting about the double slit experiment is that on observing the particle travelling through, we collapse the probability wave down to a point where we no longer see the wave outlines, but we see the individual particles. But here's the thing to remember when we do these experiments. The actual process of observing a particle fundamentally changes that particle. We must impart other things upon that particle to observe it. Now, there are ways to minimize the impact that we have on particles, but we cannot mitigate it. To observe a particle is to affect either its velocity, its spin, its location. So by interfering with the particle, are we causing the wave to drop out and we only see the particle? Or are some of the other concepts of quantum mechanics more accurate in describing them? For example, pilot wave theory, where it's posited that the particles themselves are one part of this and the other part of it is the wave. And the wave is created by the particle as it moves through its field. So if you were talking, say, about a Higgs particle, it would create a wave whilst it moves through the Higgs field. We don't know what's right. We're still discovering these things. The true answer is, we don't know. What we do know is these particles are real and they exist. And they don't just suddenly coalesce because we observed them. What does coalesce when we observe them is our knowledge of their position and momentum and speed. We can only know so much. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle says that the more we know of one thing, the less we know of the other. We cannot know the exact true position and spin and velocity of a particle all at the same time. Well, we can't. It may be that in the future some more advanced version of quantum mechanics than we currently have is able to do that. But at the moment, these are the limitations that we have. And anything beyond that is stuff that we don't know yet. And don't know and suddenly pops into existence are two entirely different things.
In a lot of ways, this is very similar to magic.
No, Sasha. Science is not magic. Science is the observable universe. We can explore it. We can experiment with it. We can look at its actual properties. There are real physical things at play here that we can learn and understand. Magic has never been observed and just isn't real. To conflate magic with science shows a deep misunderstanding of science. Without evidence, you have nothing.
Except because it comes from science journals, we somehow trust it as being more real than a magical story of particles that pop into existence when human beings look at them, and then when we stop looking at them, then they go back to not being real. How do you draw the line between nonsense story magic and scientific results? Because we're at the point now where that line is gone. And the only difference between the two is who is telling you the story.
No, Sasha, as I've already said, science has evidence. We have experiments. We have scientific inquiry. We have the scientific method. We have hundreds of years of people looking into these things to find the deeper meanings. And we're still looking because we don't understand it all. Maybe one day we will. Maybe we won't. Maybe some things are beyond us. We will never know. But the difference is these things are observable and repeatable. Magic has none of these properties. Magic has not been observable. Certainly not repeatable. And certainly not experimentable by the scientific method. To say these two things are the same, you are just conflating. You are being dishonest to the highest degree. So Sasha, at this point, I don't think there's any point in talking to you anymore. Because there's one of two options here. One, you're a complete and absolute po who's just trying to confuse her audience and make them believe that magic can be real because science has something that you think looks like magic. Or you're just an asshole out to make money off of people who do not have the education to understand the things that you are trying to say. Either one of these makes you not the very nice sort of person. And I, for one, don't think you're worth talking to anymore. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you've learnt something. I certainly did. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a comment below. And if I got anything wrong, because you might be a scientist who's way better at quantum mechanics than I am, please leave a note down below so you can correct me. And remember, don't choke on the selfie stick.